Every summer, there's a big sale held on Steam, the world's largest digital distribution platform for PC games. For many developers, having a game on Steam is the difference between obscurity and success. It's almost unheard of for a PC game not to be released on Steam, unless, of course, it's coming from Blizzard or another company that keeps a tight hold on its own distribution. If you're new to the world of PC gaming, these sales are essential as they're a great way to get one's hands on a good number of classic games at incredibly low prices. If you've been gaming on PC for a while, you probably already know that the Steam sales are a great way to get the newer games that everybody's been talking about that you're certain you'll get around to playing right after one more turn in Civ or another round of Dota. The Steam sales are legendary. Here's hoping you've saved up, because here are 7 games you may have missed that are well worth grabbing in this year's sale. Number 1. Stories: The Path of Destinies. Developed by Spearhead Games, Stories is a rather unusual ARPG. It combines good old-fashioned platforming and item collection with the fatalistic joys of a choose-your-own-adventure book. The game's story is that you play as a clever fox named Reynardo living in a world that's threatened by an evil empire. Reynardo becomes a pivotal part of a rebellion against said empire, and along the way, he gains the ability to travel through time, though it's not always pleasant. In Stories, you see, there are multiple endings to the game. You can reach an ending within a relatively short time of starting the game, and the first time you beat Stories, you'll have actually lost terribly, but you'll also have gained knowledge about the world and its characters to use on your next playthrough. As you die again and again, you continue gaining knowledge, you learn who to trust, and when to trust them, and you become more powerful. Overall, I really loved Stories. It's well written, has fantastic voice acting, and is a great concept with great execution. My one gripe with the game is that the platforming does get a little stale after a while, even with the upgrades that your sword gets. Nonetheless, it's a game centered around a clever concept with fantastic execution, and it's absolutely worth your time. Check out our full review of Stories: Path of Destinies at blackmanandrobin.com if you'd like to find out more. Stories: The Path of Destinies is available for Windows and PlayStation 4. Number 2. Shardlight. Generally, when people think of modern point-and-click adventure games, Wadjet Eye Games is the first publisher to come to mind, and for good reason. Responsible for publishing A Golden Wake, the Blackwell series, Primordia, Gemini Rue, Techno Babylon, and other point-and-click adventures, they've been responsible for keeping the fine art of the old-fashioned adventure game alive. Now, regarding their latest game, Shardlight, I've played it and have to say it's very interesting. The story is quite dark. It's set in a post-apocalyptic version of the United States that's been ravaged by war and disease. The cruel plague of green lung has gripped the nation. An eccentric dictator rules over the ruins, and life seems hopeless for all but a few wealthy elites. You play as a young woman named Amy Wellard who, having been infected with green lung, discovers a far-reaching government conspiracy with the potential to change the world around her, for better or for worse. The game is fantastically written and features plenty of memorable characters, great voice acting, clever puzzles, and pretty decent visuals. Like all of Wadjet's games, it's retro-styled, and while the game has an old, low-resolution look, it's still quite polished. Shardlight is absolutely worth picking up if you're into adventure games, intense mysteries wherein player choice is a critical part of the game, or games with extremely weird but still believable villains. If you'd like a more in-depth look at the game, be sure to check out our review at blackmanandrobin.com. Shardlight is available for Windows. Number 3. Mini Metro. Typically, video games involving trains are part of intense and expensive simulators in which every model of train is a separate piece of DLC, or they're part of transport tycoon-type games with a big focus on realism. Mini Metro tosses all of that away to create a game about building railroads that is both incredibly simple and intoxicatingly fun. Essentially, train stations are represented by different shapes: squares, circles, triangles, and later in the game, ovals, stars, and other things that they taught in advanced placement kindergarten geometry. Each train station produces passengers represented by the shape of the station they'd like to go to. A triangular passenger will want to go to a triangular station, a round passenger to a round station, and a square passenger is going to have to settle for something because all the trains are full. Mini Metro is deceptively simple. As you draw lines between train stations, you have to take care that you don't overload any one line with too many stations, otherwise the trains won't make it to the passengers in time. Then too, you need to make sure that there aren't too many of one sort of station on a single line. Your trains fill quickly, and you need to find the most efficient ways to transport passengers while juggling your limited supply of trains. Overall, Mini Metro is a fantastic strategy/puzzle game, and it's well worth picking up if you're fond of a minimal aesthetic, if you're looking for something that's easy to learn but challenging to master, and if you want something that just feels profoundly different. Also, the game's sound and music are by Disasterpeace, and I could launch into an essay on how well they convey information to the player, but that's a discussion for another day. Mini Metro is available for Windows, Mac, and Linux. Number 4. The Flame in the Flood. Shardlight isn't the only post-apocalyptic game we're considering today. The Flame in the Flood is a great river-riding roguelike that caught our attention earlier in the year for its strangely serene spirit. It's not a fast-paced game, it's set in the American Midwest, and it has an unusually easygoing attitude. There's a gentle melancholy on the whole game, and that's not to say that it's boring. There's always something that needs doing. Maybe your boat needs fixing, or your belly needs filling. The game itself, however, isn't in any rush. It's weird. Death is around every corner. There are dangerous wolves, and boars, and bears, and you could starve to death, you could drown, you could get hypothermia, you could bleed to death. Anything can go wrong. There's pressure to do well and to survive, but the game doesn't feel stressful in itself. Gameplay-wise, The Flame in the Flood feels a little like Don't Starve mixed with FTL Faster Than Light. You ride along a procedurally generated river, stopping off in spots to pick up supplies, fight wolves and boars, and make contact with the eccentric survivors who are clinging to life in their own ways. I'll be straightforward. I'm not generally big on survival games, but The Flame in the Flood really stole my heart. It's got a lot of personality, good gameplay, and this great Southern Gothic vibe and aesthetic that you just don't see in very many games. It's well worth checking out if it sounds like your sort of slow jam. If you'd like to read more about it, check out our review. The Flame in the Flood is available for Mac, Windows, and Xbox One. Number 5. The Banner Saga 1 and 2. I'm a big fan of the Banner Saga series. These RPGs are set in a world inspired by Norse mythology and, in some aspects, feel like a Telltale game. Essentially, you're put in charge of a caravan of people trying to survive what seems to be the end of the world. The gods they believed in seem to have forsaken them. Are they dead? The world's coming apart at the seams, and stone giants wage war with significantly more relatable horn giants. In between it all, you're trying to keep your caravan of people in good spirits, and trying to survive the constant attacks from the stone giants, roving bandits, and others. Regarding the combat, it plays like most tactical RPGs. If you're familiar with the likes of XCOM or Fire Emblem, you know what I'm talking about. Your units are arranged onto a grid full of enemies and obstacles that can be used to your advantage. The story of the Banner Saga really shines. It's full of powerfully emotional moments that often feel like you're doing, because in many ways they are. This is because of the way that the Banner Saga handles player choice. Sure, you make a lot of decisions that clearly affect the outcome of the game and characters, but you also make decisions that don't clearly impact the game, and some of these pay off later on in the game, whereas others simply seem to be there for the sake of helping you get into role-playing. The Banner Saga does a great job at putting you in the boots of the characters that you're playing as, something that a lot of RPGs, I feel, fail at. If you get the chance, play the Banner Saga. It's an absolute must if you're into games with great stories, memorable characters, and a real sense of role-playing. The Banner Saga is available on Mac, Windows, and Linux. Now, the Linux version of the second game, which continues the story of the first, is still in development. Now, if you've already played the first game, check out my review of the second. It's available at blackmanandrobin.com, and keep in mind that your game save from the first carries over into the second game. If you played the game on Steam a while back, just re-download the game and your save should be there in the cloud. If not, well, you're gonna have to go on that adventure all over again. It's not necessary to have played the first game to understand the second, but it is really strongly recommended. The second game is pretty much the second episode. Number 6. SteamWorld Heist. I'm gonna be straightforward. I haven't played the PC version of SteamWorld Heist. That said, I feel comfortable recommending it based on 3 things. Number 1, how good the game was on the Nintendo 3DS. Number 2, the fact that I played the PC version of the game's predecessor, SteamWorld Dig, and know that the developer is more than capable of making good PC ports. And number 3, the fact that the PC version of the game has gotten great critical reception, as well as good reception from the players. Now, SteamWorld Heist is a steampunk game in which you play as Captain Piper. You command a ship, and you're not exactly a pirate, you're more of a space privateer. Now, the backstory of the game is that planet Earth has been lost. You and your steam-powered robot fellows must eke out a living in the solar system. You scavenge the remains of old Earth, hunt pirates, pick up new crew members, and try to stay on the good side of a somewhat oppressive space government. The story is a little bit weird, but it's good fun. Now, the gameplay of SteamWorld Heist is pretty unusual. It combines turn-based squad strategy with aiming and shooting. Each robot in your squad can use different weapons, and you have to pick the right blend for each mission. It's a rather cartoonish game, but don't let its appearance fool you. It calls for careful tactics and thinking, and is absolutely worth checking out if you're into strategy games. Check out a review at blackmanandrobin.com if you're still on the fence. SteamWorld Heist is available for Mac, Windows, PlayStation 4, PlayStation Vita, and the Nintendo 3DS. Number 7. Moon Hunters. Now, Moon Hunters is a pretty strange ARPG. It's a lot like Stories of Path of Destinies in that you have to play through it in order to really progress. Its story draws on Mesopotamian mythology to tell multiple stories about Isaria, a moon tribe, through the eyes of different characters. Now, the moon tribe is being threatened by the growing sun cult that's ruled over by King Marduk. The game's gotten some mixed reception, and I'll be honest, I can understand why. The gameplay itself is a little flat. It's a game with a really high concept. Now, at the end of each playthrough, you know more about the world, mythology, and characters, and something that I like about it is that your role-playing actually affects the gameplay. Your character traits are influenced by your actions as a player, meaning that certain routes in the story may be blocked off if you're impatient or prideful, but these traits may also open up other routes. I haven't played a lot of Moon Hunters, so my opinion on it is still forming, so while I do admit that the game's imperfect, the world and concept really have me intrigued. If you can look past the flaws and you're hunting for a game that does mythology and role-playing very differently, check out Moon Hunters. Moon Hunters is available on Mac, Windows, Linux, the PlayStation 4, and PlayStation Vita. What do you think of these 7 games? Do you think they're overlooked gems, or do you think that I missed games that deserved attention? Hit us up on Twitter and follow us at blackmanandrobin for all the latest game news, reviews, previews, and interviews. You can also follow us at blackmanandrobin on Instagram if you're into that sort of thing, and you can follow me on Twitter at Jordan_Cameron for my own views.